Is it too early to make an FM21 video? Because I'm doing it anyway. Hello there folks, welcome back. My name is Ben and today I thought we'd talk about Football Manager 2021 and the features that I hope and predict. It's a bit of prediction, it's a little bit of hope, it's a little bit of a wish list of features I would like to see in FM21. And about 13 months ago, Football Manager released all their features for FM20. So with a month before that date, I figured we'd talk about what I would like to see in FM21. Let's find out. Now, like, in the last 3 years, Football Manager have improved and evolved, as it always tends to do, right? Football Manager have a very steady process of making their game better year on year on year. People always ask me, what's your favourite game? Well, in theory, the game always gets that little bit better year on year, so I always say the newest version. In FM18, they looked at dynamics, showing the level of influence in a dressing room. We had a completely upgraded scouting centre. Fantasy draft mode came into the equation, and well, we've not really seen much of that since. And they put in a new graphics engine. So, you know, things evolved, which was good. And FM19 was a similar situation. Training overhauled, big visual changes. And by that, I mean everything went purple. Why is it? It's still purple. I know you can change it, but purple. We've all just sort of accepted it now, haven't we? And by accepted it, I mean changed our skin to the dark skin or downloaded a different one every year. They also had a big tactical revamp in FM19. There are 3 different phases of play, of course, and that's changed the game for a lot of people. It is a really good element of the game now. So FM20, Google Stadia. Oh yes, Stadia. How did you say it? How did you say it once and then never say it again? And at the same time as announcing that, they confirmed it wouldn't be coming out on PlayStation or Xbox, which is something a lot more people than I ever realised seemingly want. I don't know if playing it with a controller would be as fun. I mean, you can play it with a controller on PC if you plug a controller in. I mean, people don't, but you can. They also brought in the development centre, Club Vision, better graphics. I mean, new gen, regen faces, they couldn't be much worse than the previous couple of years. But with all that said, let's look ahead at the things that are coming up. Of course, with the world and in the climate that we're in right now, of course, they've had less time. They've not been in the office to work on the game. And if you work at Football Manager and you watch this video, I don't want you to be upset that I've not come to you with these suggestions personally. I've also not written them on the forums. So, pinch of salt, sprinkle it on me. Or on some food. So let's start with a big one. Goalkeepers. I'll keep this pretty brief for my sanity. My mental well-being is important here. The animations, the match ratings for goalkeepers aren't good. Goalkeepers just seem to act unrealistically, and even when they're having a stormer, it seems almost impossible, unless they save a penalty, to get above a 7.5 average ratings. When have you ever seen a player or a goalkeeper in a contention for an award in a league season, or even be one of the top players in your team, like a top 5 player in your team, a top 10 player in your team? It's too rare, and I don't like it. A midfielder can get 1 assist, and all of a sudden that midfielder is getting an 8.5. Like, it's not really fair, especially in a winning team. The only time my goalkeeper seems to get a good rating, as I say, is if he saves a penalty, or he gets a clean sheet and saves loads of shots in a 0-0. Like, and apart from, or even when I'm beaten, like, but he's had a great game, it doesn't seem to happen enough, and it feels unjust. And as a former goalkeeper, run the clip. I feel like it's my duty to try and defend them. I want to see an improvement. I don't know if it would break the entire game, but come on. And also the animations of the goalkeeper sometimes is not great. We'll talk about animations later. All right, so we start with goalkeepers. We started pretty big there. But let's move on to something different. Let's go for Undefined Players, which is something I've always had in my mind, and I'm curious to see if they'd ever implement. So you get a youth intake, and most of your players have defined positions that they are natural in playing, but some don't. They haven't quite figured out what their strengths and weaknesses are yet, and it's up to you as the manager and the coaching team to decide what those are. We've seen in player profiles where the natural, the bright green colour that you have, and then sort of oranges. Imagine if you had a player who was quite strong in a few areas but had no natural position, and you essentially get to be the person to decide that. Now, of course, there'll be people saying, well, you can kind of do that already, Ben. If you want to really change a player based on his attributes, you can move and train him there. But imagine if it sort of focused in on the position that you played in more and more early on, and you had the ability to do that from the start, rather than having to convert him from something else. You get to sort of pick his path. There's the playing time pathway was brought in not that long ago. I'd like to be able to do a positional path and have that from the very start when they come into the youth academy at 16. It just seems like something that happens in football all the time. We see right backs become wingers, or we see wingers become fullbacks, or strikers become centre backs, and those stories seem to pop up all the time. And in Football Manager, that seems a lot harder to do. and I'd like to experiment with that more, especially when they're at that young age. Great example recently, Trent Alexander-Arnold was a central midfielder for his entire career, and then realised that moving to right back would give you more opportunities, and they allowed that to happen. I'm not saying every player in the intake has to be like this, but I like 3 or 4 undefined players, I just think would spice up the intake a little bit, would make it interesting. They wouldn't always have to be good, but when they are, that could be really good fun. Oh dear. If you watched my YouTube series in FM20, you'll know this one is a problem for me. International management. It's not fun. There's a disconnect between me as a manager and them as a playing squad. You can't do training. And having to play through loads of months in the game without, like, obviously you can holiday, but I don't really want to have to holiday. Having to play 3 months of the game while doing nothing other than getting reports on players that come in from coaches. There is an argument to say that international management is quite boring. Football Manager doesn't help itself when it comes to pure. Like, if anyone is doing a save right now and they are just an international manager, reveal yourself. You can't be real. You can't be a real person. But if there is a way to move things along a little bit quicker, to get those reports in a more streamlined manner, and to do training, and to be able to rest players in international tournaments, then international management would immediately be far, far better. And right now, it feels watered down. It doesn't feel like something that's even worth doing. When I get an offer to become international manager in the game, the same thing happens every time. I go, this is going to be great. I'm going to manage England. I'm going to manage Spain. All those players are going to want to join me. And then I realise, oh no, I have to manage them. And that bit isn't fun. And yeah, I'd like to see some improvements to international management to make it more fun. That's all. I mean, I'll leave that to the programmer boffins. Good suggestion, Ben. Good suggestion. Make it more fun. How? I gave some reasons. All right, so we've had something undefined. Now let's have something more defined. So FM love refining things, and this is something that I'm actually a little bit surprised hasn't happened before, but should maybe happen now. Now this would require a subtle UI change, and it would also change the fact that it's in alphabetical order, maybe, and you'd have to go away from that, and that would be game breaking. Some of you have just realised that all of these are in alphabetical order, haven't you? It's been like that forever. But what I'm talking about is things like passing, things like tackling, and to give FIFA credit, and wow, have I said that out loud? They already have this in their game, so you would have an attribute. So right now we have passing, but we don't have short passing and long passing. 2 things that I think are vastly different. There are lots of footballers in the world that are quite good at short passing and not so good at long passing. There are some that are very good at long passing, and I think should almost be more defined within that. Tackling as well. How many times do you see a player who's got good tackling miss a slide tackle 90% of the time as a player burst past him down the wing, and alternatively also be brilliant at standing tackling? I feel like both of those things could be a little bit more defined. If you go onto a player profile right now, we'll do it, and you hover over the passing screen, this attribute reflects the player's ability to successfully find a teammate with the ball. That's great. It's just a little bit vague. That's how I feel about it. All right, we're already getting nerdy, so we might as well keep going. I want, and I hope they do one day, more historical data logging. I know, sexy, viewers, very sexy. If I've got a laptop or a PC that is capable of more storage and got more processing power, I want this to be available to me. For example, something I would love to be able to do in the history screen, right? You see where it says appearances, goals, assists, player of the match awards, and average ratings? On every other squad-based screen, I can right-click that top bar and I can add something to it on the regular squad screens. In the history screen for a player's stats, I can only look at those. I mean, I can change them to be a graph, which I don't think anyone's ever done on purpose. But I kind of wish that I could have some of those stats available to me in the same way that they are in the squad list. There are so many. Have you seen my squad view? My squad view has so many of these things that we could maybe see in the future and then compare based on previous seasons. Football Manager have sort of done this already, but with player development. If you go to a player's progress screen and you go to attributes and then you find what they've been doing in the all-time period, or since they were 18 or since they were 20, and you can see the development there, they're clearly logging some data. And I understand that Football Manager is a game that works and it overwrites lots of information, and that's how the file sizes stay so small. That's challenging to say. And look, even if this data only becomes available to teams that I'm managing, that's file players that I manage. That's a good start. That's perfect. And that's kind of where I'd like it to go. In a game that is all about spreadsheets, it's all about data, I want more data in areas that allow me to maybe look back on players and judge them easier when it comes to looking at other players. Of course, I would love it on every player. I'd love to be able to select a player and see exactly how many minutes they played throughout the course of their seasons. But I understand that doing that with maybe 600,000 or even 50,000 players would cause maybe a sluggishness that I don't really want. But I think if I've got the computer to do it, then let it try. All right, it's time for a biggie. Come on, are you ready? Let's go on a big one right now. The graphics engine. This maybe needs explaining for some players, so I'm going to try and explain it for some people that maybe just don't care enough to investigate it as much as I do. So there is a graphics engine and there is a match engine, and those two things are not the same. One of them, the match engine, that controls what happens, and the graphics engine, that controls how it looks. And I want it to look more. Now, all we really have with Football Manager to compare it to are FIFA and Pro Evo. Sorry, Soccer Manager. And both of those are available on PC. Both of those have much bigger budgets. They have bigger teams working on their games. And I'm sure that plays a part in just why. Also, Football Manager is a game that is traditionally played on laptops. It's played on devices that aren't necessarily able to handle this. But computers are moving forward. Graphically, things are moving forward. People are playing Fall Guys on laptops, and graphically, although that's not quite the same, and it's not doing as many calculations, I don't think. I say that, the way I play it probably does. Trying to figure out what on earth is happening. I just think graphically, when you look at FIFA and you look at Pro Evo and then you look at Football Manager, one of them looks like it's from 10 years ago, and the others look like they're trying to push some of the limits of what's capable in gaming. Some of you won't care about this, and I totally get that. Most of you watching, not most of you, some of you watching will be 2D players, and you will never look at 3D, and some of the graphics issues will bother you, and that's partially why you don't use it. That's me. I really like 2D, but if they're going to have a 3D element, and they're going to try and talk about that and improve it year on year, what I'm asking for is quite major, and I'm not saying it has to look like FIFA this year, or next year, or maybe even the year after, but I'd love it to be more. I said that at the start, and I mean that. And when I say more, I don't just mean like a 5% more or a 10% more. I mean like a 30% more. And then another 10 and another 10. And then all of a sudden we're looking at a match engine and a graphics engine that is far prettier. I shouldn't have said match engine and graphics engine. People won't understand again. And look, the animations are slightly better year on year, but enough for me personally? Not quite. I'm going to use this as a brief intermission to mention that I'm not talking about online Football Manager today. I'll be doing that in another video. As someone that helps run and organise the Streamer Showdown, you can imagine I've got a lot of thoughts on online. We will touch on that. I'm only doing 9 things here. We'll consider that number 10, and that gets a video on its own. Okay, social media. Hello. Speaking of which, you can follow me on Twitter. There's a link in the description. That's a good plug. Now, a few years ago, Football Manager brought in the social media tab. Some people thought it was a gimmick. Some people thought it was unnecessary. Some people thought it was a key part of football and the way that it develops and needs to be part of Football Manager if it's becoming such a big part of football. And all of those opinions were fair enough, really. But in 2020, player power, player marketability, clubs' influence on social media and interacting with fans is bigger than it's ever been. You think about when a player signs for a big club, or even not, it doesn't matter what club it is, the hype around that club and that community and that team and that player is astronomical at times. And that's never really replicated in the game other than 3 people tweeting it and your spokesperson retweeting it. Oh, Ben. This is a football management game. Why are we talking about social media? Mate, if I can ask to buy a new stadium, I think I should be allowed to tweet. All right, maybe not tweet, but I'd quite like to be able to like the posts that I agree with, maybe, and even maybe dislike some of the posts. Give me a block button. There's some people on this social media feed that really don't like me. I think social media should play more into player power. It should maybe look into the financial side of that and how marketing works, and having a good marketing team and a good social media team might need to be added to the staff of maybe not the management, but I don't know. Would I hire the technical director? I don't know if I would. Sometimes. Not all the time. I know, I think social media could be one of the things that gets a big improvement this year, and I think rightly so. Women's football. Is it time? In 2018, Miles Jacobson, studio director for Football Manager, said we'd need to put a lot of work into the match engine, particularly graphically, and we'd need to redo thousands of animations via motion capture due to the differences in body shapes, plus a lot more. That was a few years ago. And I wonder if it's starting to become a thing that Football Manager think they can be the industry leaders in doing. We saw FIFA kind of make an effort by putting the women's players within FIFA, something that you did a little bit, but it felt very limited, and they had a part of their story mode, the journey, but had a women's storyline in it as well. But aside from that, they've never really gone all in on having women's leagues or women's career mode or anything like that. And Football Manager, to my knowledge and how I feel about them, are someone that like to be industry leaders. They like to do things that not many people will take a risk in doing. And I think this could be their next big thing. It would change a lot. And it would cost a lot, and it'd be a big impact on the way you play the game. And maybe, much like some of the other things I've mentioned, much like the 3D graphics, this might be something that you'll never care about, you'll never touch, and you'll never integrate yourself with. And that might be true. But also, Football Manager they're a big powerhouse within sports culture. And I think including women's football within that and making more of a deal out of that and including them within the game could be seen as a brilliant thing and could help the women's game improve beyond what it already is. That the notoriety that it gets isn't close to what the men have got right now. And there's going to be a whole other debate on whether that's fair or not. And you'll have your own opinion on that. But it could make such a difference. It could be such a big change. And I'm sure you won't find any people within the women's game that would be against it. And I think Football Manager are the type of brand, they're the type of game that would maybe take what would largely be maybe a risk, but might be a risk worth taking. It could add a completely new element to Football Manager, which people have never really considered, and that's something that I think we should find exciting. So Miles has said no before, but how many times will he ask the question and be able to say no again? All right, final thing. Really, this doesn't deserve to be in a category of its own. UI development. There's one thing in particular that I really want in the game next year, and if I really cared or was that bothered, I would have written this on the forums long ago. You see this bit of space down the left-hand side when you can move the toolbar in? The bottom bit where nothing exists, right? I would love 5, maybe 6, maybe 3 options to be able to pin certain things to that toolbar. So if I've got a transfer target and I want to be able to monitor him a little closer, or I've got a club that I may be thinking of joining, or a rival coming up, I'd like to be able to pin certain things to the left-hand side that I can quickly go to just by clicking them. That would be so cool. It's such a simple thing. I would just like little pinnable elements in space that already exists, and I'd like to be able to click things there, please. That's if there's I know I've not written on the forums, but can we try that one? All right, there we are. That's my list. They're my predictions. They're some of the things I would like and things I think they may look towards in the future. Let me know, comment section. This is perfect. Maybe I'll do a reaction to some of your suggestions and we'll talk through things that you think should be in the game or you'd like to see in the game in the future. Get in the comment section. I'm sure there's things I've not mentioned that you are passionate about, and I'd love to hear from you within those. If you enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it. If you want to see some more, make sure you subscribed. Of course, as FM21 comes out and ramps up, we'll be doing loads more conversation about that, as well as collaborating with other creators as well. So make sure you subscribed. I'll see you again soon for a whole lot more. And from me, it's Benji. Until next time, see you again soon. Goodbye.